Hey friends, Liz from Peacock Homestead here, and I have my little Jackie over here slumbering in the background, and we just wanted to pop in and give you an update on the Three Rivers Challenge that we've been participating in, and we're halfway through. If you don't know the challenge, Jessica hosts it over on the Three Rivers Homestead, and she does it every year now for about 7 years. And we are going to be showing you a week's worth of recipes. I found a couple really neat recipes online, and I can't wait to show you those. And I wanted to show you a couple of things here that I have brewing. I have this spruce tip oil that I've been infusing, so I'm going to be using that in some lip balm and some face cream and some hand cream. And I also have a vinegar, of course. I have a spruce tip vinegar. I don't know if you can see that, but there's the mother. So, and then I have it in well water and sugar. I have a mother in there. And then I added a little bit of apple cider vinegar. So I got that going too. So we're gonna let those infuse for a little while and then see what we can make with those. And I'm also gonna show you at the end of the video what we've been working on. I have projects for my husband, of course, a honey-do list, and we're remodeling our kitchen, and we painted it a beautiful color. It is an artichoke green, and I'm totally in love with it. We're gonna be redoing our counters and putting in a new sink, so hopefully you'll get to see all that soon. All right, so let's get into this week's recipes. We started off at the beginning of the week making these beautiful sourdough donuts, and let me tell you, they are addicting. I got this recipe over from Lisa over at the farmhouse on Boone, and she just released an amazing book called Daily Sourdough, and it is such a blessing. I have been doing so many recipes from that book. Lisa's book is the nicest sourdough book I own. And I've had a little bit of experience doing donuts. I've worked at a bakery for about 2 to 3 years. And we made donuts, we did bread, we did pumpernickel, rye breads, Italian breads, we did desserts and bagels, and I did cake decorating, and so that was an experience. We start off at 3 in the morning. We have to have the donuts done by 6 o'clock, and it was a day. We didn't get done till noon, and our schedule was out of whack, all of the bakers there. But I learned a lot from there, so I am definitely appreciative. And I cut these pretty thick. I put holes in some of them because I knew they were going to cook faster. And then next time, hopefully, I will do like a jelly filling. That would be super delicious. And I'm using my beeswax wraps to cover them and let them sit for a bit. So here I am stirring in some cinnamon and sugar. I had cooked some of the donut holes, so some of those are done, and I'm going to roll those around in there, and I'm going to try one. And I have some of the bigger donuts cooking, and when you're cooking donuts, you want a nice little line in the middle, and that will mean they are cooked perfect on both sides. You want to wait a few minutes and then flip it only one time and then one time back and take it right out. So the one thing that we made a ton of, and I can remember, was the seasonal donuts, like the cake donuts, apple cider, and then the pumpkin donuts, and then the punchkis. I have made so many of those. I have dreamt about them. And that was a while ago, but I still do remember making hundreds of donuts. they were fun to make, but getting up at 3 in the morning was a little bit of a challenge, but I was a morning person, so I got through it pretty good. These donuts are wonderful. I love the sourdough taste in them, and they puff up nicely. And my husband and I enjoy them, and we'll be making these again and again. My favorite thing about sourdough is that you can take it out, feed it once a week, and you can use it in so many different recipes. I love its diversity, and look how wonderful that little donut hole turned out. It was super tasty, and it was still steaming hot. It was wonderful. The diversity of using your sourdough starter is really endless. You can make different kinds of breads. You can make cookies, cakes, sweetbreads. You can make different kinds of sandwich bread. You can use it to make artisan breads. I've made crackers with it. I've also made sourdough granola bars. I've done pizza dough with it. You can use it to make bagels, waffles, pancakes. The possibilities are endless with using your sourdough. I was also thinking sourdough has saved us a ton of money. All I have to do is feed my sourdough, put it in the fridge, feed it once a week, and use it on all these beautiful recipes. And it saves us money from buying yeast. And it's so much healthier for you, for your gut health. So I'm making the rest of these donuts, and you see how there's a little line there? That's how you want them to look. And I've got these frying in regular olive oil, and you can use palm fruit shortening or Crisco, whatever you got on hand. I do prefer using olive oil, and then you can also use coconut oil to fry them in. But I did decorate these with a little glaze. I used a little bit of milk and powdered sugar. And the other ones I just decorated with cinnamon sugar. And I put half in the freezer so we can enjoy them for a snack or a breakfast and another night. On this night, we are going to be making a hamburger helper. This is my go-to recipe for my homemade hamburger helper. I have some hamburger, noodles, salt and pepper. I have this broth-based seasoning beef flavor that I needed to use up, a can of cream of mushroom soup, and then I have a half a quart of corn that I thawed from my freezer, and a quart of chicken bone broth that I had in my freezer as well. And then I really love making my own tea blend, so I have to put this one in my blog yet. This is a relaxing, immune boosting tea. The immune boosters here are the elderflower, this chamomile, this German chamomile. It actually reduces inflammation and promotes sleep. And this is another immune boosting herb, which is the purple coneflower. And I put about 2 tablespoons of each herb in there, and I am gonna add my boiling water to my French press, and I'm gonna let that sit for about 5 or 10 minutes and then enjoy my tea. I was thinking about putting a little mullein leaf in it, and that really helps with lung health, and especially during the winter when colds are going around. Mullein is actually an anti-inflammatory for your lungs. It's good for people with emphysema and asthma. It'll relax your lungs and it'll loosen up the mucus. And it also has vitamin C and flavonoids, and that protects cells from any free radicals. And the mullein plant actually has a big long shoot that comes out in the middle of the plant. When it's 2 years old, it'll come out with this beautiful chandelier little shoot, and it grows these wonderful little flowers that smell just like lemons. And you can infuse that in oil, the flowers, to make an ear oil for ear infections. It is a wonderful plant. This is a super simple recipe. So all I'm doing is browning up the hamburger, and I'm just gonna make sure it's all the way brown, and then we are gonna start adding our other ingredients. So the next ingredient that we are gonna add is our chicken bone broth. I had this in the freezer. It is one of the cans that did not seal for me, so I always put them in the freezer because I do not want to waste any of my hard work. So this is going to be nutritious and tasty with the bone broth. That is the base of this recipe, and I usually add spices like salt and pepper, and you've seen my little can of mushroom soup there. If I don't have that, that's okay. But usually I add that to thicken up my broth and add more layers of flavor to it. I also usually add some garlic powder and onion powder to it as well. So I'm going to take this little whisk and break up all the chunks of the mushroom soup. And once it starts boiling, it'll all thicken up and blend all in together nicely. For extra flavor, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of this broth-based seasoning. I've had this for a little while, so it's a little clumpy, so I need to get it all used up. It has a really nice flavor. I love this. Hopefully after this challenge is done, I will stock up on some fresh stuff. And I'm going to get that all mixed up, and we're going to add the corn to it. We're going to get that all mixed in there. I had this corn for a while. I've had it in the freezer and I needed to use it up, and this was the perfect recipe for that. And it tastes just as fresh as when I canned it. I love canning vegetables. It really does preserve them very well, and I love flash freezing them as well. That's another way. And you can also dehydrate your veggies or use a freeze dryer. And another spice that I'm going to be using in here is garlic powder and onion powder. And those are my go-tos for this hamburger helper. So I'm going to add about a tablespoon of each. This recipe is already on my blog, thepeacockhomestead.com. If you just go in the search bar and search hamburger helper, it'll pop right up. And I also have different recipes for tea. I have different tea blends on my blog, as well as fire cider and other fun recipes too. Now that the liquid is coming to a boil, I'm going to add my noodles and mix them in really well. I ended up adding another pint of bone broth, and I'm going to cover them up and let it cook for about 10 to 15 minutes. Sometimes it cooks a little bit longer. I just usually check a noodle in about 10 to 15 minutes in to see if it's al dente, and then it'll be ready to serve. And this is what dinner looked like on this night. Our tasty hamburger helper. And then we had some butter sourdough bread to go with it. And paired it with my tea blend that I had made that night. On this day, I decided that I was going to grind some grains. I found a really awesome recipe from a YouTuber. Her name is Mary from the Homestead, and she has a wonderful recipe for sandwich bread using your freshly ground grains. And I'm also going to be grinding some grains for my dog's treats. I have the recipe on my blog, thepeacockhomestead.com. And they really love these treats. They go gaga over them. So we're gonna grind some grains. I think I grabbed about 4 cups of each. I grabbed soft white wheat berries for the dog's treats and hard white wheat berries for my bread. I had decided to purchase this grain mill a few months ago. I did a lot of research on which one that I really wanted, and Tom and I talked about it, and we figured this would be the best one for my kitchen. I've been experimenting on different recipes with different grains. I had made a coffee cake a couple months earlier, and it turned out so delicious, so I'd love to show you guys that recipe. But this is my dog treat recipe. It has pumpkin in it, eggs. It has oats. You can use quick oats or old-fashioned oats, and that's what that looks like in there. I also used peanut butter, and if your dog's allergic to peanut butter, you can use sun butter. So right now I am getting the bread recipe all together. I'm using hard white wheat berries, and I'm gonna add all of my liquids. So I'm adding my water, and then the trick is to let your grains soak for a half an hour. And I'm also going to be adding my sourdough to that. I actually had it all fed and it was active. And I'm going to be putting that in there. And we're going to mix it all up with a little bit of oil. And then I'm going to let that sit for a half an hour. And I did add a little bit of honey. I believe it was about a teaspoon of honey to a tablespoon. I'm going to get that all mixed in the mixer and let it soak for a half an hour. And then we're going to come back and add the yeast and the salt. Thank goodness I had a little bit of yeast in my freezer because I really wanted to try this recipe. Okay, so I have the dog treats all rolled out. So what I did is I just used a little plastic bench scraper to make all of the little shapes. Okay, my grains have been soaking for a half an hour now. It is time to add the salt and the yeast and get that all mixed up in my blender. I'm going to pop this all in my mixing bowl and put it back in the mixer and let it knead for 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'm going to let it rest for a good hour and a half, and it's going to rise. And then I'm just going to grease my little bread pans. I used my beef towel that I had rendered in a couple videos ago, and I've been using that in a lot of recipes. I've made a pie crust, I made some cookies, I've even put it in my cinnamon rolls. It has been delicious and very useful. So I'm going to pop this in, mix it for 5 to 10 minutes, and then we're going to let that rise and roll the bread out, and we're going to let it do a second rise. And I don't really time that, I just see what it looks like to see if there's a little bleb at the top. I would say about 2 to 3 inches, and then we're gonna bake that for 40 minutes. In my glass pans, I use 40 minutes. Her directions was 35, but it's gonna be at 350 degrees for 40 minutes for my glass pans. These are the dog treats coming out. So I cooked these for 40 minutes. I switched the pans around 20 minutes until they get an even cook. And I cooked that at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And they love these, and I love making them myself because I know what's in them, so I know it's going in their little bodies. And here is my bagel dough. I have that rising. I have a jalapeno cheddar, and I didn't have any dark cheddar, so I used my white cheddar, and it turned out so cheesy. I love the way these turned out. And I'm gonna let Jack and Blessing try a cookie because of course they're waiting with bated breath. Jack's so cute. He always licks his lips before he gets a treat. He's just been waiting. And let's see what B thinks. And it's B approved. That's good. Let's check on that sandwich bread. Oh, that looks really nice. Look at how beautiful that looks. And the most satisfying part is punching the dough down. And then we're gonna pop it out of my mixing bowl. And I'm gonna weigh it out kind of even just because I don't want one to cook longer than the other. And I did actually end up using my little thermometer that my husband got me because he ruined the other one. I asked him not to put it in the sink, and it totally ruined it. I was like, oh my gosh, you are in so much trouble, mister. So he apologized and he bought me a new one. But the internal temperature of the bread should be around 195 to 200. And that's when you know it is done. So I got these around the same size, or I tried to. One was a little heavier than the other, so I pulled some off one dough and put it on the other because I get a little OCD about that. But I didn't want that one to cook longer than the other. I wanted to pop them out of the oven at the same time, and I can't wait to show you how these turned out. But first we're gonna roll these out. I kind of wanted to use my rolling pin to roll them out, but this worked just as good pressing it out. This is how I usually roll out all my other sandwich bread. So I kind of measured the pan a little bit with my eye, and then I'm kind of spreading it out a little bit, and then I'm gonna roll it like I would like a cinnamon roll, and then I'm gonna pinch both sides and bring it in. It's pretty basic. I know there's fancy ways of doing it, but this way worked pretty good for me. And that way I don't get any big bubbles in the middle when I bake it. And then I have the pan greased with my beef tallow, and you can't even taste it on your bread at all. It's just smelling like beautiful bread when it comes out of the oven. And I didn't really time the second rise. I kind of just watched. You see how it's underneath the line where the pan comes up? So I watched it and I waited till it was at least 2 inches over the pan, and I'll show you what that looks like too. I'm gonna get those bagels in little balls here. So I'm usually cut it into 8 equal pieces. I'm cutting it like you would a scone, kind of in the little triangles, and then I roll them up into little balls. And I let this rise overnight. So I mixed all the flour and the water and the salt and sugar and the sourdough together, and I mix that all together with my hand. And then after I let it rise for a little bit, I add my ingredients like any chocolate chips, or for instance this recipe which has jalapenos and cheddar. I mix that all in, and then I let it rise overnight on my counter. And you can let it rise in the fridge as well. I find really good results if I just let it rise on my counter. But if I'm doing something the next day, I pop it in the fridge, and when I come home after work or if I'm doing errands, I'll pop it out and let it sit there for a few minutes, and then I'll start working with it because it's going to be really hard coming out of the refrigerator. And I am going to cover these for about 20 to 25 minutes. And then I'm going to make the little holes in the middle. So I'm just using my thumb and my pointer finger and kind of pulling it out and making a school bus tire. And then we're going to boil these for 30 seconds on each side. And I like to add a tablespoon to a teaspoon of honey and a teaspoon of baking soda, and it makes a nice crunch on the outside. This is what the bread looked like when I did the second rise. So I waited till it was up a little bit over the ledge, and this is what it looked like all done. It turned out so beautiful. I love this sandwich bread, and I am going to be making dinner for us tonight using this. So I'm going to be making a regular tuna fish sandwich and some pickles and some chips. This will be a bread recipe that I will be definitely using again, especially knowing the little trick of soaking my grains to make it so beautiful and fluffy and soft. This is one of the best sandwich breads that I've ever made. Besides the sourdough, I really like making sourdough breads as well. I just wanted to talk to you guys about how the pantry challenge is going. So if you are doing the challenge, let me know how you're doing in the comments. So far, we have used a lot of our canned goods that didn't seal in the freezer. And we've used some of our meat in the freezer, some of our hamburger, and also I use a pork loin, and I canned that up in the last video. I made like a pork loin stew with some veggies. I used potatoes, carrots, onions, and garlic, and I put my pork loin in there, and I made a little bit of room in the freezer so far. And we've used up a lot of our potatoes and collard greens, so there's only a few jars left. And I finally used some of that corn that I had hiding in the freezer as well. It tastes just as good as the day that I canned it, so that was awesome. And I've used a whole bunch of stuff up so far, and I'm saving some of my all-purpose flour for a few desserts that I wanted to show you guys. I wanted to do puff pastries, so I'll be doing that. And the filling, I use pudding, and then I dip it in chocolate, and they're mine and my husband's favorite treat. I have not made them in a while, so I'll be super excited to make them and enjoy them as well. But this is how the tuna fish turned out. It was super delicious, and we really enjoyed this dinner. This month has flown by so fast. I can't even believe it's going on February already. It just blows my mind. And now we're halfway through the challenge. And I can't wait for the next challenge, the Every Bit Counts challenge. That's, I think, one of my favorite challenges to do because I love gardening and preserving and harvesting and wild foraging. That's one of my favorite things to do. And these are how the bagels turned out. They turned out ooey gooey and spicy, and they were really good with cream cheese and some of my candied jalapeno peppers, my cowboy candy. Those were super delicious like that. And the bread turned out really nice. I'll be going back and getting that recipe again. And this is the project that my husband's been working on. So he's been remodeling the kitchen. We're starting off with the cabinets, and I picked out the color artichoke. Those actually took quite a while to sand. And we got those all primed up on the bottom cabinets, and then we're gonna start with the upper cabinets. The next thing that we want to do is put the butcher board countertop up. I showed you guys one of the butcher block tops in a previous video, and then I'm going to do my whole countertop with that, and then we're going to get that all oiled up and cured, and then we're going to get my farmhouse sink in. I'm thinking about sewing some curtains. I will probably most likely be doing something with chickens or roosters, since I have my little chicken collection going already. Isn't that a nice color? I love that color. I've been wanting that for a while, so that's exciting. I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope you're having a wonderful week. Many blessings, and I will see you on the next video, friends.